It says we're live. We are live now. Perfect. It says we're live. DJ Talk.
Oh, hi everybody. We're live.
Now.
Yep, we're live.
Perfect. It says we're live. DJ Talk.
Oh, hi everybody. We're live. Yep, we're live.
All right. Yeah, you're fine.
Cool.
All right. Let's do this.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the Morningscape podcast. I am Matt Moody, joined by DJ Mitchell to cover the Monday, November 19th Daily Fantasy NHL slate. DJ, how you doing? How's your weekend? Missed having you on the Thursday show.
Yeah, this is my first time being home in 2 weeks. The Wednesday we had a mandatory thinking. Sounds awful. It was at a really nice place in Buffalo and free everything. And I was like, everything? So I proceeded to get really drunk. And then we went out. So I didn't come back to record because I wasn't thinking about it. So sorry.
Yeah, that happens. As I mentioned on the show that I was doing solo, I did say straight up that DJ loves attention. So if you give DJ attention, tell him how much you missed him, how much better it is to listen to the podcast with him around rather than just me droning on. I assumed you would take better to that than me just going passive aggressively, ugh, okay, because, alcohol, and I totally get where you're coming from there. But with that said, it's good to have you back for this pretty interesting week of daily fantasy hockey, given the Thanksgiving, I guess, workaround that they have to go through. Because we have a 9-game slate here on Monday, followed by just a 1-game Tuesday slate, and then a mega slate on Wednesday. So a little bit different schedule, but we'll do our best to get content out for the Wednesday slate of games. We'll see what that's going to look like, just because I know the Tuesday I'm driving from Philadelphia to Rochester at night, so might just hop on to do it alone later, or we can see if maybe Wednesday doing something. But regardless, we're here to talk about the Monday slate. So, DJ, anything you wanted to cover before we got into things?
Friday we're gonna have like all of the shirt situation figured out, and thus meaning that Friday should be the day that you'll be able to purchase them. If not Friday, then like honestly, it could even be what's today? Today's Sunday. Something should maybe even be tomorrow. I don't know yet. But by Friday, we should have the availability to purchase shirts.
Cool. Yeah, that's definitely something we're looking forward to. Perfect timing with it being Black Friday and all.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Look at us. We did that on purpose.
So, yeah, good news there. I think that's just about everything. I got an update from Doug. It does sound like the sim will be back and functional pretty soon, within hopefully the next couple weeks. So just a situation there that'll keep on. No news is probably not great news, but it's something that needs to be done to kind of update it and get it hooked up to something other than Fantasy Labs. So guess some housekeeping right out of the way there. All right, 9-game slate. We have, starting at 7 o'clock, Columbus at Toronto, Dallas at the Rangers. Dallas having played on Sunday afternoon against the Islanders, so technically a back-to-back, but a little bit more off time than usual. Buffalo at Pittsburgh, Washington at Montreal, Florida at Ottawa, LA at St. Louis, Tampa at Nashville, Vegas heading from Vegas up to Calgary, right? Or are they in Edmonton right now? Sorry, I was. Yeah, never mind. They're in Edmonton. I was totally under the assumption they were playing in Vegas for some reason, but that makes much more sense. Vegas at Calgary on a road back-to-back, and Winnipeg at Vancouver. So anything there stand out to you in terms of matchups, game appeal, injuries, anything like that, just right off the top that you think you want to target or attack on this slate?
I mean, injury wise, we don't know 100% on Crosby yet, but what you read made it feel like Crosby would not be playing against Buffalo. So that's one thing. Do we know about Kuznetsov yet? I know he didn't
So
practice today, so it
yeah,
doesn't
so
sound good.
Holtby seems questionable at best, and then Kuznetsov and Oshie both seem pretty doubtful. So
Yeah,
definitely, news that's worth taking advantage of for Washington. There, it does sound like both of those skaters will not be playing.
yeah. I mean, basically, if you want to know if there's a guy that's injured, just check my fantasy team, and if they're on my fantasy team, they're definitely hurt. That's kind of what I do now. I just look at my fantasy team, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, all these guys are hurt, so I can't put them in DraftKings. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing with my life. Oh, I am defeated, by the way, in case you're wondering how my season's going. Does anyone care? Probably not. Let's get to the slate. First off, before we start anything, I think we need to take a moment to recognize the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, they are #good? Question mark.
Yeah, the question mark's needed. So I don't know if anyone that doesn't follow me on Twitter yet, well, what are you doing? But just so everyone knows, Buffalo is tied for 4th place in the league, and they will be facing off with tied for 27th place Pittsburgh Penguins. So,
just as everyone suspected it.
That's really like everyone's predictions at the beginning of the year, and it's led us to this. So
with that in mind,
Buffalo.
DJ, take a guess on the money line for Pittsburgh at home against Buffalo on this slate.
Pittsburgh's got to be favored.
Yep. What is it?
Minus 150.
Minus 200.
What? Oh, God.
So, not a whole lot of credit being given to Buffalo there.
Vegas, a bunch of jerks.
Yeah, I will say, just from a purely macro perspective, looking at the Sabres' schedule, they are playing their 3rd game in 4 nights, so that's definitely a part of it. This mini road trip they've been on. So
Casey DeSmith is 6,900.
Wow!
Did you hear me?
Yeah, Matt Murray 7,100 too.
So. I know. That's super cheap for them with Vegas odds, like at home.
Yeah.
Because they're doing a 3-game part. All right, let's get to the center position though, right? Let's just stop.
Yeah, so I guess that was kind of my segue into looking at the Vegas odds for the slate. I guess honestly I should stop calling them Vegas odds because realistically they're just as much New Jersey odds or whatever. So maybe money lines. We'll look at the money lines on this slate. Like I said, Pittsburgh's the biggest favorite in a 6 over-under game. The other games are all 6 over-unders except for Dallas Rangers, somewhat surprisingly, and LA St. Louis is a 5.5 as well. So those are the only 2 5.5s. All the others are 6s. And then we've got the other big favorites on the night are Winnipeg on the road in Vancouver, St. Louis at home against LA. They're both minus 165-ish right now. And all the rest are between, minus 140 and pick 'em. So it should be some pretty tight games on the slate. It's the NHL, so there's not really blowouts that often or anything. Unless you're the Pittsburgh Penguins, apparently, because, oh boy, they are really struggling. But let's talk about the center position because it's headlined by a guy, John Tavares, who's, coming in, leading. Actually, I'm not sure if he's leading in fantasy points. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's leading the slate in fantasy points per game. So that's certainly a top option you could go with here. But interestingly, we've got a guy in Tyler Seguin who I think leads the league in shots right now at only 7K in a pretty juicy matchup. We've got Malkin here with no Crosby. We've got Scheifele up here, somewhat surprisingly. So what are your thoughts on this elite tier of center here?
I think Sagan's probably my number one. I don't hate Malkin at all either. The Sabres, I know I like to talk them up, but Malkin in the past 2 games has had 24.3 and 23.2 minutes a game with Crosby being out. So he's going to see a ton of minutes, and definitely he'll find some matchups against some of the weaker Buffalo lines. So I think Malkin and Seguin are probably my top two, with Eichel just right a little bit beneath them. Eichel this year is really not profiled the way we thought. Like, he's shooting a ton, but he has 22 points in 20 games, and 18 of those were assists. So it's like, do you feel like you need to stack him with Skinner to play him?
I mean, I know.
Or potentially
So the interesting thing about
back on
Eichel
the top line.
What's that?
I guess because he should be back on that top line.
Skinner with Reinhart, is that what you're saying?
No, Palmanville finished the third period and had the game-winning goal, so I think they might. You know what I mean?
Oh, gotcha.
Like, I'm saying, like, it could be Palmanville, Skinner, Eichel.
Right.
Tomorrow.
Okay, I gotcha. Sorry,
It
you were cutting out a bit, so I couldn't quite tell what you were saying. But no, I mean, I don't think that you need to stack Eichel with anyone. You know, we haven't seen him putting up, you know, like massive goal numbers, but he's still shooting the puck a ton. And, you know, a guy with the caliber of shot he has is not likely to shoot, you know, between 5 and 2.5%. He's shooting 5% on the season and 2.5% in his last 10 games. So I really don't think that there's much to the argument that, like, oh, Eichel's a playmaker now. Like, you know, maybe he's looking to pass a little bit more than he was before. But that's partially because Skinner is so, you know, electric around the puck and has such a good shot, whatever, good finishing abilities. But if Eichel keeps shooting this much, there's just as likely a case where he finishes, you know, with 2 goals in a game, and maybe Skinner only picks up 1 assist or something, and you don't really need Skinner because he's not the driver of the line. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to tell you Eichel doesn't drive that line. So I definitely think Eichel's an okay one-off. But in this price range, I think I do prefer Malkin over Eichel, and I definitely prefer Tyler Seguin. You know, Sagan's probably, I don't know if he's the top play on this slate, but he's pretty darn close. I will say I love Tarasenko at wing at only 6,300. But, like, if I had to pick one guy on this slate to go off, it might actually just be Seguin. So maybe that's a bit
that's fair. I don't think it's that crazy. So I guess moving down to the next tier under, I guess, Austin Matthews, who obviously rest in peace.
Yeah.
There's a kind of a lot of guys that feel kind of surprising in this range, like Domi and Ryan O'Reilly, who has been fantastic in St. Louis. Is there anyone in here that you think could be somewhat sneaky that might go under-owned that you might want to get a piece of? I mean, Barkov's been pretty weak, I'd say, this year. Not like unrealistically weak, but going against Ottawa, like, do you have any interest in him? He's been getting a ton of minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I think this is something that I've touched on like prior shows, but we're really seeing with DraftKings, especially, I'm not really sure what the FanDuel progression is like, but we kind of began the year with like the elite guys priced where they are currently. And then the rest of these guys are all basically like 5 to low 6K players that have been producing. So they've kind of, you know, just kept increasing salary wise. But at the same time, these elite players that are like still producing haven't really gone up much in price, if at all. Like the Tavareses, the Sagans. Obviously, Sagan's cheaper than he was. Malkin even. Like, I don't see the, you know, much reason to think that saving the, you know, $5,000 to $1,000 to get down to one of these guys, I don't really see how that pays off. You know, in a vacuum. Obviously, if there's a 1v1 where you absolutely need that money, it makes sense. But I don't think I'm really starting any of my lineups down in this like low 6K-ish range, just because I don't think there's that many great values relative to the elite tier of center, which is so accessible and has, I think, are much better plays. So I guess that's more of my macro thought here. If I had to pick one guy, though, I think it would be like this Dubois. I mean, obviously it's a bit points chasey because Atkinson absolutely broke the slate on Saturday, but I really like Dubois. And then I do have some time for Steven Stamkos at only 5,600, but I think that's like pretty much the only way that I'm like getting out of the elite tier center or going with a much cheaper guy at center.
Okay, that's fair. So yeah, moving down the list, I guess. Yeah, we definitely get to the names I honestly, one name that I mentioned to you was Anze Kopitar. Again, it might be a little points chasey, and his shot numbers have not been fantastic, but he's been getting a ton of minutes in St. Louis. I don't think it's the worst play at 5K. And then Jeff Carter right below him, kind of the same. They kind of get all the run. Maybe like Carter has just been a little bit more unlucky. He hasn't had a point in his last 5 games, but he's been getting about 20 minutes of ice time. So, do you have any interest in those two LA guys? I know LA is kind of a dumpster fire right now, but
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're a total dumpster fire. It's not like St. Louis has been that much better though.
that's
I
very
mean,
true.
they've. I mean, they're not terrible, especially defensively, but they've struggled too. So I could certainly see this being a spot where LA, they don't need to have a smash night for Kopitar and or Carter to pay off their pretty meager price tags. But I think if I had to pick one, I would go with Carter just because I think he's a bit more likely to get me there on shots alone. I don't think Kopitar is ever getting you value on 5K with, I don't think he's getting you like 6 shots on goal and 2 blocks without picking up a point. Like Kopitar doesn't really operate in that manner. Um, but I do really respect the St. Louis defense still. I don't think that's been their issue this season. It's mostly been just some pretty poor luck goaltending, or you might just say pretty bad goaltenders. Kind of one and the same in my mind, just because I'm not really sure if anyone has the ability to say, "Oh, this team's going to be terrible goaltending this year." Because I mean, you look at teams across the league, and some of the best teams right now are teams that you think, "Wow, their goaltenders were going to suck at the beginning of this year," but they just didn't. But regardless, I do think that this LA, I think they make the most sense in this range. Lars Eller at 5,200 is mildly interesting just because, assuming Kuznetsov doesn't play, he will be centering the Ovechkin line and first power play. So, you're definitely paying, you're not getting him at a discount, but 5,200 versus like where Kuznetsov was in the 6K range, it's a little bit of savings. So it kind of depends on how you feel about Eller as a player. And then Nazem Kadri at 5,300 is very cash reliable on any slate, just about. Um, so, all right, DJ, you mentioned this at the outset though. 5,800 Elias Pettersson. What are your thoughts on him? Given the tough matchup, he's gone from 7,700 just 3 games ago down to 58 already. Kind of like Steven Stamkos, and I mean, I think both of us agree that Stamkos is a better play. But I know Pettersson, he's at home. People love the guy because he's nasty. But what are your thoughts on him from like a DFS perspective? Are you looking to play him, picking up the discount in GPPs or anything like that?
Yeah, I think he'd be definitely a GPP only kind of play because I think in this range, a lot of people will pivot to Stamkos if this is kind of where they land and maybe not go with Pettersson. But then again, like there's just so much hype around him that it might drive a little bit of ownership. He did get game against Montreal. He's gotten all the way up to 24 against Buffalo. Like they want to get this guy on the ice. He definitely has a lethal shot.
They have to get that guy on the ice. What else?
Yeah, they really have to because I don't know. I was trying to think of a clever, funny name, and I just totally blanked. So, never mind. I'm trying to think like what their lines were last game because they were different. Did they win? They lost.
Correct.
Lost. That doesn't help you. And they changed their lines all game. They changed everything during the game. Wonderful. Yeah, he started with Godolbin and Eriksson, and then ended up with Virtanen, Grunland.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, I don't know. I'm fine with it. I think it's a decent play. I wouldn't say it's a fantastic play, but I just can't imagine stacking big, and I don't know if I want to take him solo, where I might look to, maybe take a little bit of a. I mean, I kind of like the Columbus side a lot, and I know it's point chasey, but I do like that first power play. So
right.
I like Dubois. Like I just feel like this range, like I kind of like a couple of these guys, and I don't know if I'm going to fall on Pettersson, but I don't hate it. Yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah.
It's not very deep.
I wanted to set you up just because I don't have any interest in it. He's not enough of a shooter for me to really look at. But I think at this price, if you feel strongly about just playing him, betting on his talent. His shots have actually been pretty, decent as of late. 3 shots per game over his last 10 games. So definitely some like realistic expectation for success there. But he's not going to shoot 26% all year. And obviously, when that regression hits, it'll be tough for him to produce because the team around him is just so bad. So not for me, not this matchup, nothing else. And all right, so going a bit cheaper at center, I'm looking about 4K and below. A name that stands out to me is Derek Brassard, especially with Crosby still out. Brassard's not the safest play by any means, but he will be centering a top 6 line. We don't have Pittsburgh's lines from like a Sunday practice. I'm pretty sure they had the day off, but it'll be interesting to see in morning skate like how it appears. Brassard is not on the first power play. Gensel took the Crosby unit. However, Brassard was centering to end last game Gensel and Hornqvist. He began the game centering Gensel and Kessel. So obviously, Brassard's going to have some good players, alongside of him. So I think 3.8 to get exposure to that is certainly, it's a pretty good play in my opinion. All right. What do you say about that, or any other names stand out to you?
I don't know if anyone's really standing out too much. There's no one down here that's just like a clear misprice, I'd say.
So one guy that's really stood out to me lately is Philippe Danault. And he's gone from like not playing power play time and being like a bad shooter. And in the last couple of games, he's like been pretty good, and he's playing power play time. And against Vancouver, he played 20 minutes. He's back home going against this banged up Washington team. 3.9 for Danault. If you are like a buyer of this Montreal early season success, and honestly, I'm really not. But he's centering Tatar and Brendan Gallagher, and Gallagher's the guy that I love. And Danault, like I said, has been playing power play time for this team. So I think 3.9 actually does make a decent amount of sense for him. Might be a bit better of a floor play than Brassard just because he kills penalties. He has probably a bit higher of an ice time projection. So I might have just cut you off. I kind of lost what you were saying because internet
I wasn't
problems.
saying much. Yeah, okay. I keep losing you too. So like, you said a name before. You said Danault, and I had no idea who you said. So I was like, well, I don't know what you said. So I was gonna go off of. I was like, I don't know what you said. So moving on. Did you say Brassard before?
I did. Yes.
Okay. I thought that must have been your top. It is, but I just get he's fine. Now I just started looking down the list. I mean, there's really no one that like is like this point. Like I'm really hopeful that like Robert Thomas, for example, could end up getting a bigger role. But at this point, it's kind of hard for me to stick my neck out for him. Like he had 16 minutes last game, but he really doesn't shoot enough or get power play time. So like, there's guys that I'm keeping an eye on down here. I mean, like Evan Rodriguez is 2.7, but he hasn't played the best for what reason.
Yep.
So like, there's guys down here that I like DFS wise, but none of them are getting minutes, so I can't really suggest them.
Yeah.
Why don't we move on to the wing?
Yeah, I agree. I don't see much to like at the centers. Cheap, super, super cheap. So yeah, let's go to wing.
Get in the group me, and if we see anything tomorrow, because there wasn't a ton of news today, then I just feel like Sundays are just slower. Like people aren't working Sundays, so like they're not like tweeting stuff. So like there wasn't much of news going into the slate.
Right. You know what I mean? Most teams have like CBA mandated off days, and Sundays certainly make sense to use those. Like every week, you have to have at least one day off. So most teams like have that day on Sunday, just because if they're not playing a game, obviously they have to work. But it does make sense to give your players like Sunday off. So we don't have that much information, so we're just kind of guessing, which honestly makes Mondays kind of exciting. Just because there's less certainty, and something I love is getting that sort of edge from the uncertainty and embracing spots that I feel really strongly about that aren't officially official. So hopefully we can get some of those spots like per morning skate or any of that Monday morning, or talking about it on the show like Philippe Danault. I don't think we have confirmed that he's like on the first power play, but he was last game, so that's a good I guess, like bet on what you see versus what you know for sure kind of thing. But all right, we have Ovechkin at the wing. Speaking of what you know, he's he's Ovi, 16 shots over his last 2 games. One of those being a back-to-back effort against Winnipeg, where he played 24 minutes again on the second half of a back-to-back and had 9 shots on goal. Like the guy is just a freaking animal. So I mean, it's kind of the Ovechkin tier up top, and then around 7K we have Wheeler, Kessel, Radulov, Mike Hoffman, Cam Atkinson, Mitch Marner. Like there's just a bunch of plays in like this. Honestly, let's call it the 6 to 7K range because that's really what it is. Like, so going all the way down to like 6K where we have guys like Panarin, Kucherov, Tarasenko. Does anyone stand out here, DJ? There's just so many names. I don't even know how to start piecing it together.
I mean, Ovechkin's like I think far and away the top play. I think he's the top play for me. His price doesn't help, but he's just getting so many minutes and shooting so much that it's like really would be hard for me not to play him. I don't hate the matchup either. So like Ovechkin, I think is the top guy on the slate in general. Under him, I mean, there's not one guy in this range that I would say like there's no reason behind playing them. I like Line A lot though at 6,500. Just like that price and his ability is just kind of like comes together. I think that like he hasn't scored too many goals this year. Where like I think he's probably not on pace for what he had last year. But
he scored 4 of them in Finland, where we couldn't really roster him for DFS. So
that's so true. That's probably I know. So I feel like he's definitely a candidate for some positive regression. And then you mentioned Tarasenko, and like there's Kucherov right there, and Panarin at like 6,300 range. So I like those prices a ton as well. So there's a lot of goodness in this upper tier, and I definitely want to try to take advantage of the. Let's say
I'll second you on the Line A. I was actually going to mention him as like probably my non-Tarasenko top play in this tier. I mentioned Tarasenko a bit earlier, but Line A currently leads the NHL in shots per 60, and part of that was because he was playing fewer minutes than most of these other studs being on the third line. However, last game against Buffalo, he was on the second line with Brian Little and Kyle Connor, and obviously the first power play. So he played 20 minutes in that one. It did go to overtime. So even in a regulation game, you can probably pencil him in for 17 to 18 minutes. And that's a bit, it's a touch higher than the 16 minutes he's averaging on the season thus far. So I think given the matchup, given his price, given his shot rate, Line A's like a super, super good option here. Tarasenko has pretty much the same sort of story behind him, like just in pretty obscene shot rate. The puck flows through him, I think, more than it does maybe with Line A, just because Tarasenko holds the puck a bit more, and LA's a complete dumpster fire this year. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on. But I mean, it doesn't even end there. We have Kucherov at 6,300, who I do also like. I probably would just end up playing Stamkos instead. But Kucherov seems to be like back doing Kucherov things. Like I'm not really sure how to explain his. I can't even say he struggled because he's still like above a point a game player. But for daily fantasy, he wasn't like shooting really much, if at all. But the shot attempts are back for him, and so that's a nice bit of resurgence. And then we have Marchessault, who's also top 10 in the NHL in shots per 60 on the year, down at 6,100. It's a bit tougher of a road back-to-back matchup, but I do like that for tournaments as well. So really, if I didn't list a guy at this price, it's not because I don't like them. It's just because I like other players like a whole lot more. I mean, like Forsberg, 6,200. Who would have guessed? I mean, he's also pretty incredible, but and then we didn't even touch on Atkinson coming off of a hat trick and assist in one period. Mitch Marner, who's it's an embarrassment of riches, I think, at the wing position on this slate, and a real key is going to be to keep an eye on. Not only do I like this play, but like, is there a way that I can get a play that I like just as much for cheaper? Because I think that's a nice way to save a little bit of money. All right.
Hello.
Yeah, got him back. All right. So I was just finishing off the elite wings by saying there were not really many bad plays you can make up here. I mean, I didn't even mention Alex
The whole time?
Radulov what?
Were you talking the whole time I was gone?
No, I was not, DJ. I told you to be silent about it and that we would get back and started, so I didn't have to edit this out, which I'm not going to do anyways because I know our listeners love hearing, random nonsense for just a few seconds in their land because of truncate silence. But anyway,
I knew that you were going to do that. I just thought like you were like saying that you kept talking the whole time, and I was like, wait, no, I thought you meant. It was fun. Why don't we get back to the wingers? So how about that last guy we were talking about, which was I don't know because I don't know when I lost you. I always tried to do again. It froze. This time it loaded. So now I know not to play Kucherov.
That is a wonderful story.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay.
Continue on with so what I was going to mention is with Radulov back, this Dallas team is so different. Like, it's actually insane how they've been this year, like with Radulov at 5-on-5. Obviously, it's been mostly that Ben Sagan Radulov line. But like using the Hockey Viz, like Micah Blake McCurdy's like model for like, I guess it's like an expected goals model, but it's like visual. So it's like a heat map basically. Radulov, with him on the ice, the Stars are 50% better than the league average so far this year. Now, like to put that in some context, last year with McDavid on the ice, these Oilers were about, I would say it was about 25% better. 25 to 30%, depending on like what year, what time frame you look at for McDavid. So like that Radulov Ben Sagan line has been so incredible that I think that it does make a decent amount of sense to look at Radulov even at a very lofty price tag at 6,900, which you might like, DJ.
Very nice.
Very nice. All right, so if we aren't looking to spend all of our money at wing, which could be a good play, there's other positions too that we have to fill out with players that we also like. There's a couple names in like this next tier at wing, I would say like the 5K tier that I'm interested in. The first being Patrick Hornqvist at 5,500. I mean, He's just scorching hot. Like, he's going to shoot the puck. He's got 13 shots in his last 2 games. With that came 3 goals. So he's going to be playing on one of these premier lines for the Penguins. I prefer him slightly more if he's playing alongside of Malkin. But it's honestly not that big of a deal because his power play upside is just so enormous. And I think 5,500 for Hornqvist is just much too cheap. And then Matthew Tkachuk, kind of similar story, but a bit less of a shot floor, but more upside driven. Tkachuk is 5,400 on the first power play for Calgary going up against this back-to-back Vegas team. And I think that that's a nice spot to take advantage of as well, just given how cheap he is and how good that like Backlund line is at 5-on-5. You would hope that Tkachuk can take advantage of it. In addition to the power play. So any other guys here that you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at Kyle Connor. I just totally lost. Yeah, 5,800. Last game he scored against the Sabres. He played with Little and Laine and on the top power play. At what was his price? 5,800. Like I just said 1 second ago. I think you could do a lot worse. I think I'm definitely gonna have, and this will, I guess, spoiler alert, be one of my stacks. Connor, Laine, and Byfuglien. That feels like a really nice little stack to me. That isn't completely going to break the bank, and also has a ton of upside against against Vancouver. So I like that a lot. I also had Hornqvist written down. Definitely a guy I'm interested in, and Gensel. Gensel was with Hornqvist 5-on-5, and also on the first power play. You said Gensel or no?
I did not. I was actually going to mention a couple other guys at the 5K mark, which is very, I guess, not necessarily the most ideal thing because there are so many good plays here.
It feels like there's every play is a good play right now, and that's scaring me. I don't know why I like every play so much.
Yeah, so it seems like Victor Arvidsson is still out for Nashville, And last game,
Mm.
Craig Smith joined the top line of Forsberg and Johansson, as well as even when Arvidsson was in the lineup, Craig Smith was still playing on the first power play. So Craig Smith is one of those guys with an extremely good shot rate. He's just per minute one of the best shooters in the NHL, and you can't get fantasy points without shooting unless you are, Joe Thornton, basically. So I think for 5K, getting exposure to that first line, even in a pretty tough matchup, is a great way to go about things, save a bit of money with Craig Smith, and get yourself some goal-oriented upside. And then I'd be remiss to mention Tom Wilson playing first power play in the absence of Oshie and Kuznetsov. Played 24 minutes last game against Colorado. Obviously, with Ovi at 5-on-5, makes for a great line stack, along with Lars Eller. So just two other names that really, really stood out to me in a big way at the wing. Honestly, Gensel is a great play too. We just mentioned like 10 others, so I think it's more of a pick the spots that you want to have exposure to, more so than piecing apart like, oh, this plays X percentage points better based on Corsi or based on shot attempts, or I guess they're the same thing, but individual shot attempts. Like, I kind of think that it's more of a, like, I want exposure to this team, so I'm going to take this guy. That's kind of how I'm planning on making my decision here at the wing position. But all right, anyone cheap, DJ? Well, let's find some cheap wings just in case everyone can't fit in these studs.
Yeah, one guy that I had kind of like pegged out that now I'm kind of not sure on was Andre Burakovsky at 3K, really going cheap, but I thought he'd get a huge bump from all the injuries, but maybe he's not the guy that is going to see the number of minutes. He was on a line with Backstrom and Vrana, and they still didn't really give him too much run. They also didn't play him on any of the power play, so he ended up with 12 minutes. Actually, he got a little bit of power play time, but not any substantial. He had 0 points, 0 shots on goals. So I don't know if it's him. So do you think it could be Vrana? That could be the cheaper guy on Washington that could see some upside. He also didn't have a ton of minutes, but at least he had power play time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I'm like diving for Vrana, I'm just gonna get Tom Wilson instead because,
Yeah,
we had this argument when Wilson was out of the lineup and the Cats were struggling for a bit, but like Wilson's not a bad hockey player. He's just
he had 24 minutes.
He's just a shitty person who likes to headhunt. But like he's got a decent set of hands. Like he knows where to be offensively. And you don't need to be that game breaking of a talent to succeed alongside Ovechkin. So Wilson is definitely a fine play, but I think he's a bit more expensive than what we were hoping for in a guy like Burakovsky breaking out or something along those lines, which doesn't really seem to be the case. They just seem to want to put it all into the hands of Ovi, which I'm certainly okay with for DFS purposes.
Yeah, no, definitely. Honestly, that's a really good play. He had 24 minutes of ice time last game, including power play 1 and penalty kill. So, yeah, I could jump on board.
Our boy Philip Hedl has goals in 3 straight games now at 4,100. So that's a bit of it's a bit of a points chasey thing, but he has been seeing top power play billing. Unfortunately, he's been like taken away from the Zibanejad line at 5-on-5, so not quite like a cash play to me. But I think Hedl's fine for 4,100. Drake Batherson's come up and gotten 3 points in 2 games, so he's a cheap guy here.
Yeah, do you know what his shooting percentage is?
Is it high? No, it's 100.
It's 100.
Interesting. He only has 1 shot in his first 2 games.
1 shot, and it went in. And it was kind of a snipe.
Well, I don't have that much of a concern just because he's shown in the AHL and in juniors that he's not the worst shot generator. So that could just be more of an outlier thing. But, it certainly would be better if he had 5 shots in each of his first 2 games. But even though that's not the case, I think the only reason you're not playing him is because, a guy like Hedl's right at the same price. But I don't really see all that much that I love around this price range. Like any
I think if
dumpster diving you're looking to do.
I think if Virtanen is with Pettersson, I might get myself a couple beers and just get ready to shotgun him in case he scores. Jake Virtanen has seen pretty decent minutes. Like his shot numbers aren't fantastic. I honestly, if you look at his game log, it's like 1-3-6, 1-6. Like I don't know what his angle is, but I think him with Pedersen definitely gives him a big boost. They would be an interesting stack against Winnipeg. It definitely would go utilized. And they both were on the first power play together. Like I think he's a decent player. I mean, we're talking about a former first round pick. He's still pretty young. I don't have no problem with that. To be super contrarian because I don't think that'll get touched, and I don't know how much Winnipeg's going to try to match up, but Vancouver's home, so they can do their best to try to get those guys out against some of the weaker players.
Yeah. I guess something to keep an eye on in morning skate is it kind of relates to my Matthew Tkachuk mention from earlier, but James Neal is 3,400 and did see a sliver of power play time with that first unit in Tkachuk's place last game. And what's even, I guess, better from that perspective is that Neal had 6 shots on goal last game as well against Edmonton. None of them went into the net, but that's coming after a 3-shot on goal game. So for 3,400 for James Neal, I think that's a fine play given the matchup on a back to back. So if he jumps into the top 6 at all, which I don't think he will, given that they won, then Neal would be like a smash play. But if we do get confirmation of their power play units, that would be nice. But even without it, I think the second power play, like 14 to 15 minutes for James Neal, is a fine way to go about it at only 3,400. But all right, I think that's everyone that I really have any interest in even like mentioning. I'm probably going to try and get 2 of these mid-tier wingers and then an expensive wing or something like that because this slate has so many good options. Like we don't usually do this level of fawning over like so many players, but really it's a good slate for like multi-entering, that kind of thing.
Agreed. So why don't we switch over to defensemen now? We still have Morgan Riley at the top of the list as he has decided to be unbelievable this year.
Yeah, just on pace for a 40-goal season, no big deal.
As we expect him to get. So, other than him, we have all the top guys, the normal crew. Of the top guys, one important note: Seth Jones was on the first power play last game for Columbus. He didn't have a single shot on goal, but he blocked 5 shots. He's definitely a guy that can be a pretty good block plus shots guy, and on the first power play and against Toronto, definitely I'm keeping him in my consideration set. But anyone else at the top here that you are heavily in on, or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I want to like really be in love with this Florida Ottawa game. It just feels like Ottawa's been such a like up tempo team for some reason. I can't even explain why, but that kind of throws me onto the scent of Yandel and Shabbat. But I'm not sure that like there's one guy here that like really does stand out for me at the elite tier of wing. I think Carlson's more of a GPP play for me just because I'll likely have OV and cash, and I don't know how much how much I want to go in on like Washington in this spot, and I just don't really see myself paying this much for Morgan freaking Riley. So I honestly think that I'll be going a bit cheaper than like this upper tier of defense. But I do like Seth Jones against Toronto. I like all these guys, but I think there's some better, cheaper options that like I'm pretty big on myself.
All right, that's fair. I guess I already mentioned Bufflin. Like I think I'll have him in a stack, for sure. So I'll just mention him again, I guess, because I think that Winnipeg power play is going to be something that I target. So I'll say it on the podcast. So then if he goes off, then I look smart. Okay.
Nice.
So you mentioned the cheaper guys. Let's get down there. I guess my first question, Dallas on a back-to-back. You looked over Dallas. I think some people might have interest there. So what would you consider for their defense?
I mean, I think it's got to be Heiskanen, but I really am not in love with the way he's profiling from a daily fantasy perspective. Like he's just not that much. He's not that great of a rate shooter for the price. So it is worth noting that 2 things: Dallas ran 11-7 on Sunday afternoon, so that throws the defensive time on ice numbers slightly out of whack. And also, Esa Lindell scored 2 even strength goals like right at the beginning of the game or right at the beginning of the second period, and hence was playing on the first power play over Heiskanen. I don't think that was anything more than, hey, the game's already, I think it was like 4-1 or something. Let's try to get this guy the hat trick kind of thing. But there is that slight bit of doubt that maybe Heiskanen's not going to be on the first power play next game. Like I said, I don't think that'll be an issue, but I honestly am not that interested in Heiskanen regardless. So a couple of names that are standing out to me at this price range are Ryan Ellis. Ellis has really come on as like the main shooter on like the Nashville power play 1B, I would call it. Yet hasn't scored yet this year. He has 10 shots in his last 2 games, but everything going into last night or Saturday night's games was trending upward for Ellis. I wish I had instant recall of the numbers I was looking at, but I think he was taking something like 31% of the power play shots while he was on the ice. And so plus, or when you add in like his block shots floor and just the awesome minutes that he plays, like 25 a night without PK Subban, who is officially day-to-day, but I think should be out for because he's on IR. And so as long as Subban's out, I think Ellis is just an awesome play from like a time on ice perspective, along with his shot plus blocks floor and offensive upside. And then the other guy that I really like is Jeff Petrie at only 4,800. So we spent last week kind of worrying about Petrie's role on the first power play. It seems like that was solidified as of last game where he was back on the first power play. Actually, the last 2 games he's been back. And in both of those games, he played at least 26 minutes. So I really like Jeff Petrie as well, given that his price has fallen and his role seems to be safe.
All right.
Anyone that you're looking at besides those 2? Because those are probably my 2 favorites on the slate right now.
I don't know. I'm just kind of looking through. Yeah.
I mean, what about Drew Doughty at 4,100? I mean,
what the? But why?
Because he's been terrible.
Well, I mean, the team has been terrible too. Let's not get crazy. Wow, that's really cheap. Wow, why is Jake McCabe more expensive than Drew Doughty?
Because Jake McCabe plays at 5-on-5 for Rasmus Dahlin, who's just insane.
Yeah, that's got to be like McCabe has 1 good game, and his price goes from 3,100 to 4,200. What in the world? Okay, well, anyway, yeah, Doughty's pretty fun. What about LaJory? I mean, I don't hate him. He seems to be pretty okay. He had a couple rough games in there, but back down at 4K, I don't despise that. Yeah, I don't know. Really, I like what you said. You gave a lot of good stuff. I don't think we need to dive too deep here on defense because I don't know. We don't have a ton of news, so it's kind of hard to be like, oh, this guy's in the right spot.
Yeah, I do want to say one thing on the Vegas situation because Nate Schmidt is back as of Sunday night, so I'll be interested to see how it officially turns out. But based on I'm looking at it with 7 minutes left in the third period, Colin Miller is still leading the defense in ice time. Well, actually, Brendan McNabb is officially leading it, but we don't really count him for fantasy purposes. So Miller is also playing on the first power play of Marchessault. So at 4,200, I like him just because he gets you some exposure. Well, I mean, not even exposure. I don't really want that much exposure, but he's just a power play 1 guy with a great shot floor for a defenseman and a decent block shots floor, which in the case Vegas comes out flat, Miller still could get there without Vegas even scoring a goal. So I think 4,200 for Colin Miller is a fine play as well.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm just not seeing anything really. I'm looking through. I had some ideas, and I'm looking at nothing that I really need to say. Other than Rasmus Dahlin is a really good hockey.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Lindell scored 2 goals, but even before that, he is playing second power play, pretty much officially, and with no Klingberg, he's the guy minutes-wise. So 3,900 for the amount of minutes he's going to play. If you're playing Seguin, I think that makes sense just as much as playing Heiskanen does. So I like him a bit as well.
Yeah, the Sabres had no power play time last game of any significance. They had a ton of penalty kill time. It felt like, but they were on the power play for all of about 40, maybe 30 seconds. So we don't know, but I mean, we'll see if Dahlin's on that first unit. That could be interesting, I guess.
Yeah, he's awesome. So
okay, they were stacks.
Hold on. At 3K, there's one guy that I really don't know what to make of him, but Gavin Bayreuther for the Stars, despite them playing 7 defensemen on Sunday, he still managed to play 20 minutes of ice time, and he was playing on the second power play along with Lindell. So Bayreuther seems to kind of have taken over from Julius Honka as like the guy that the Stars want to play instead of Klingberg. So just a fluid situation, but Honka seems to be pretty much out of play at this point because for whatever reason the coaches just don't like Honka. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it's really tough for me personally. I'm struggling because Honka's. I mean, even today he had a nasty play in his 8 minutes of ice time that like he set up a goal on a tee, but it's just not enough apparently. So Bayreuther could be the beneficiary of that like change in news or philosophy or whatever. Sorry, let's do top stacks.
Okay, yeah. There are 2 goalies that are 6,900 that should start tomorrow.
Nice.
Also, so like there's some cheap goalies. Cool. I already said 1 stack, so I'll say it again. Line A with Line A with Byfuglien and Connor. Not gonna break the bank. I think it has a lot of upside. 2 guys that have a really good shots, and Byfuglien who gets a ton of minutes and all power play correlated.
All right, I can certainly get on board with that. I'll likely play Line A more as a one-off myself, but in multi-entry, I think that Connor makes a ton of sense given the 5-on-5 and power play, and then Byfuglien's just a solid, rock solid defenseman for his price. Has the potential to be the top scoring defenseman on the slate. So for my first stack, that's like not really price dependent. I just Seguin, Radulov, Ben is just dynamite. I think that the Radulov is I was just watching them today, and they just looked so much better than they did before. Like Seguin wasn't really shooting from like the non-dangerous areas, but he was actually getting into like positions to score. Everything just seemed better with Radulov on the ice. So as long as they keep those 3 together, the rest of the lineup is kind of garbage, but that line in particular is just freaking explosive. I think the Rangers are just as bad, if not worse, than the Islanders. So I think this is another good spot for Dallas to run the score up.
Yeah, I mean they're on a back-to-back, but yeah, I'm not afraid of that. Dallas is pretty good at hockey. So, I'm just double checking something. This isn't what I wanted to see. I had an idea for a little bit of an off-the-wall stack, and now I'm not so sure. Danault. I was thinking about a little Danault action, but now I don't know if it's gonna work.
Don't you know, Philippe Danault?
I kind of like the idea of going against the really banged up. Well, was Holtby and were they sick?
No, they're all injured.
I just think Montreal might actually not be the worst play in the world against Washington, and they're pretty cheap.
I sign off on it, so I'm not sure who you're trying to. Are you trying to convince yourself?
No, it's not the power plays just don't correlate. I kind of no, but neither of Danault's line mates are on his power play. I would go Gallagher, I think, over Tatar.
I'm not sure how much I trust that. It does seem a little strange, those power play units, and it doesn't really match up what we've done lately. So there could be some extenuating circumstances that we don't really know about. That
could be it. I'm confused on the power plays from last game. I think either way, Gallagher or Tatar, I might lean Gallagher, and I don't have a strong reason for that. I think you could go either way. But that's a pretty cheap. All of those guys would be at I guess below your average remaining player. So I think it's a pretty decent savings stack that has some pretty good upside.
Yeah, I can get behind that as a cheaper stack. For my, I don't even know if I can call it a stack because I honestly don't know what's going to happen to it. but I want to get pieces of Tarasenko whenever I can. And so I think what the lines are going to look like is going to be Tarasenko with O'Reilly and Braden Shen. And I really like those three. Additionally, they're all on the same power play as one another. And Vince Dunn should be with them as well. And I think that that four-man stack is not going to break the bank at all, especially adding in Vince Dunn. And I'm okay leaving off O'Reilly personally, just because I don't think he's a $6,600 player. But in large field tournaments, like he certainly makes sense. So, all right, guarantee some goals and get on out of here.
Yeah. All right. Do you have anyone that you have to take?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Craig Smith at 5K. I really like him. Like I just think he's super safe. I love, his line with Forsberg and Johansson and the power play role. And, I'm not afraid of matchups, as I'm sure many of you have said over and over, or heard me say over and over and over again. So I like Smith at 5K.
All right. Boy, this is tough because I had one guy in mind, and then I'm trying to find a partner to go with, and no one's really speaking to me in this range. Just a few hundred below what I wanted. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna go back on what I was gonna do. I was gonna go with Tarasenko, but I don't even think. Well, because don't we normally say you can't take a guy from a stack that someone said? But I guess it wasn't my stack.
Yeah, I mean you can do that because it's not your stack. Kind of. That's just kind of the goal to get you thinking about other things rather than the two stacks that you're on.
No, that's true. You know what? Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go with Jake Guentzel against Buffalo, and that would leave me with what, a lot still?
57, 58, yeah.
58, yeah. So I'll take Jake Guentzel for one, and then, oh man, do I do it to him? Do I? I don't know. Do I just do Pettersson and just really go nuts?
Oh, let's get crazy with it.
Guarantee goal, Elias Pettersson. Haven't used him yet. Pettersson, Guentzel. I don't know why. Why not? You know what I mean? It's my podcast. I'll do whatever I want.
I think there's a video of Pettersson saying how he likes his name to be pronounced, and it wasn't Pettersson, and it was very strange. It was Peterson, or it was something weird like that. I swear, it was it was because we say Elias Pettersson. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that's what everyone's saying. But he said Elias Peterson, and he's but whatever you can call me Petey or whatever, and it was a funny way to end it. But
he doesn't even know his.
But it was his own name. Just so weird. I mean, obviously he's Swedish, so that could be part of it. But it was just he was literally Elias Peterson. It was I can't even say it right. I'm just terrible at it. But go find it if you're interested in how to actually say his name, because he might be one of those guys that 10 years down the road we Andre Sekera. He was Sekera in Buffalo the entirety of his career, and then he left and he's oh yeah, I actually go by Sekera now. So can you actually call me by my name? Anyways, enough stalling. As I said, I'm not afraid of matchup, and I think just given the prices on this slate, Steven Stamkos at 5,600 is just criminally mispriced. Looking at Vegas, I mean, Tampa Nashville is a 6 over/under with the over favored. It's actually the highest over/under game of the night outside of Florida Ottawa. Based on the odds you can get on the over hitting. So, I love Stamkos here at 5,600. I just think that it makes a ton of sense. And I may even have a game stack in GPPs just because they dynamically price it, despite I don't really think the matchup is all that, important, to be honest. So, give me Stamkos.
All right. I saved it. I saved it in my doc, even though I've barely ever used it. I don't even know what I'm going to do with it, but it's here.
All right, so
I don't know.
With all of that said, be sure to follow us on Twitter at MorningsgatePod. You follow me at Fake Moods, and you can follow DJ at DJ_Mitchell94. Anything else you have to say before we head into our Mondays?
Yeah, Edmonton's terrible. I cannot. I mean, this week from Cam Talbot is just the saddest thing ever. And hold on, there's a stat that I saw. Let me find it quickly because this is important for everyone to know how much I hate this man for ruining my fantasy. In his last 5 starts, do you want to guess Cam Talbot's save percentage?
902.
Point.
Wow, that was the most dramatic cutout of all time. What was his percentage?
Oh, 0.838.
Boy, goalies. All right.
So he's letting in almost 2 goals every 10 shots. Not, but like close. I mean, close enough. I mean, it's in between 1 and 2. Pretty close. That's insane.
All
and
right.
then who's my other goalie? I don't know. I started Corey Schneider today. He let in 2 in the first 30 seconds.
Yep. So yeah, that was a fun week of kicking your ass in our Dynasty Fantasy League. So, all right. With all of that, I think we can call it a show. Thank you all for listening along, and apologies for the minor technical mishaps that we underwent during the show. So, all right, from Doug, from DJ, and from myself, have a good slate, everybody, and we will see ya.